He was a young man in 1989, the year that Chinese students and pro-democracy protesters gathered in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. The Chinese government's response to those protests was one of the most violent crackdowns on civilians in modern history. Tanks. Military force. Hundreds, possibly thousands of people killed. And the Communist Party has been trying to erase it from history ever since. Arthur was part of those protests. He survived. And he knew that staying in China after that meant living under constant threat from a government that viewed him as an enemy. So he left. He came to the United States as a political refugee, settled in the Bay Area, put himself through law school, built a life, and raised a daughter who became one of the most talented figure skaters America had ever produced. The problem is that the Chinese government has a very long memory. They never forgot who Arthur Liu was. And when his teenage daughter started making international headlines as a top Olympic prospect heading to games being held in Beijing, the capital of China, someone in China decided it was time to act. November 2021. Alysa is 15, almost 16. The Beijing Olympics are a few months away. Arthur Liu gets a phone call. The caller says he is from the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, the USOPC. He says it is a routine call. A COVID-19 travel preparedness check. He needs the passport numbers for Arthur and his daughter Alysa. Standard procedure, he says. Nothing to worry about. Arthur's gut immediately tells him something is wrong. He has dealt with U.S. figure skating officials plenty of times. He knows how this works. And they would never, ever call someone on the phone and ask for passport copies. That is not how it works. He later said, and this is a direct quote, "I didn't feel good about it. I felt something fishy was going on." Arthur cut the conversation short. He did not give over the passport numbers. He refused. So then the caller threatened him. He said that if Arthur did not cooperate, there might be issues with international travel. Meaning, we can stop your daughter from going to the Olympics. Arthur still said no. What Arthur did not know yet was that this caller had physically traveled to the Bay Area to surveil their family. This was not just a phone scam. This person had boots on the ground, watching them, building a file on them, trying to extract information that could then be handed over to the Chinese government. His name was Matthew Zaburis. He was one of 5 men who would later be charged by the United States Department of Justice with spying on Chinese dissidents living in America, meaning people who had spoken out against or fled the Chinese Communist Party, just like Arthur had. Zaburis was arrested on charges including conspiracy to commit interstate harassment and illegal use of a means of identification. He was released on a $500,000 bond while awaiting trial. In the criminal complaint, Arthur Liu was referred to by prosecutors as Dissident 3. His daughter Alysa was listed simply as a family member. Think about that. A foreign government had classified a U.S. teen athlete as relevant intelligence. She had a file. She was being watched. Investigators also discovered something that made this even more targeted. The Chinese government was aware of an Instagram post Alysa had made. One that referenced human rights abuses against Uyghurs, the Muslim minority group in China that has faced what many governments and human rights organizations call a genocide. She posted something on social media referencing human rights abuses. And China noticed. And added it to the file. This is what we are talking about when people say this story is bigger than sports. A teenage girl in California posts something about human rights. And a foreign government's intelligence network flags it and adds it to a surveillance operation targeting her family. At some point after all of this started coming to light, Alysa and her father connected with the FBI. And this is where Alysa's own description of the experience is genuinely remarkable. She was 16 when she sat down with an FBI agent. And the way she talked about it later is so authentically her, just a teenager processing something completely surreal. She said she met with the agent at a local Japanese restaurant and mostly just talked. She said the whole thing felt kind of like being in a movie. She used the phrase a little bit freaky and exciting. She even admitted that she found the FBI agent's job fascinating and thought it was, quote, crazy work. That is so real. Because that is how a teenager processes something that most adults would be completely undone by. She did not fall apart. She leaned into her own curiosity about it. And then she kept training. Here is where her father's words hit different. When asked whether he considered keeping Alysa out of the Beijing Olympics entirely, given that she would literally be on Chinese soil, surrounded by Chinese authorities, competing in the country whose government had been spying on his family, Alysa Liu said this. This is her moment. This is her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to compete at the Olympic Games. I'm not going to let them stop her from going, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure she's safe. I'm willing to make sacrifices so she can enjoy the moment. A man who survived Tiananmen Square. Who fled China as a political refugee. Who refused to hand over his daughter's passport to a foreign spy. That man looked at his kid and said, "Go. Compete. I got you." The U.S. State Department and USOPC stepped up. Alysa was given security assurances. Throughout the entire Beijing Olympics, she had at least 2 people from the State Department and USOPC escorting her at all times. She was never alone. Every move was covered. She competed. She performed. She won a bronze medal. In the team figure skating event representing Team USA, in Beijing, on Chinese ice, with her government-targeted father watching from thousands of miles away. But then something happened at those games that nobody knew about until much later. After her free skate event, after she had finished competing for the night, Alysa was in a cafeteria. It was late. She was approached by a stranger, a man she did not recognize. He started talking to her. Then he followed her. And then he invited her to come to his apartment. She was a 16-year-old girl. Alone in a cafeteria in Beijing. Being followed by a man she did not know. Because of the FBI investigation and the security detail around her, this was flagged. It was handled. She was safe. But think about what that means. Even with all the precautions, even with escorts and security assurances, someone still found a window. Someone still tried to get close to her. And she was a teenager who had to carry that experience while also competing at the Olympics and pretending everything was fine for the cameras. After Beijing, Alysa Liu retired. She was 16. She had just been through an FBI investigation, a Chinese spy operation targeting her family, an Olympic Games surrounded by a security detail, and a late-night encounter that she should never have had to deal with. She stepped away from skating. And then in early 2024, she came back. No explanation needed, she just decided she was not done. She started training again. She entered competitions again. And in March 2025 at the World Figure Skating Championships in Boston, she won gold, dethroning a 3-time defending world champion from Japan. She became the first American woman to win a world title since 2006. 20 years old. 2-time Olympian. World champion. FBI witness. Survivor of a foreign government surveillance operation. And now she is in Milan, Italy, competing for an individual Olympic gold medal and a place in history. This is why the story is retrending right now. Because people are watching her skate in Milan and looking her up and finding out about all of this for the first time. They are discovering that the girl on their screen is not just an elite athlete. She is someone who was literally listed in a federal criminal complaint as the family member of a foreign government target. She was physically surveilled in America by a spy. She was followed in a cafeteria at the Olympics. She retired at 16 and still came back. She won a world title and she is now on the biggest stage in sports. And she described all of it as a little bit freaky and exciting. There is something about that reaction, that teenage, unfiltered, almost amused take on one of the most intense situations an Olympian has ever navigated, that is more memorable than any quote a PR team could ever script. Now zoom out for 1 second because there is another layer to this that makes it even more culturally significant in 2026. At the same Olympics in Milan, Eileen Gu is competing. Eileen Gu, who was born in San Francisco to an American mother, chose to represent China over the United States. She won gold medals in Beijing for China. She became a massive star in China and a controversial figure in America. And now at the same games, you have Alysa Liu, also American-born with Chinese heritage, competing for Team USA after her family was actively targeted by the Chinese government because her father stood against that government over 30 years ago. 2 Chinese-American women at the same Olympics. Both extraordinary. On opposite sides of the most significant geopolitical rivalry of our generation. That is not a coincidence the internet was going to let slide. That contrast is exactly why both of their names are all over the algorithm right now. But here is what this story ultimately comes down to, stripped of all the politics. A man survived something horrific. He rebuilt his life in a new country. He raised a daughter with a gift for something beautiful and technical and difficult. The country he fled tried to use that daughter against him. He refused to let them. He sent her onto the ice anyway. And now that daughter, 20 years old, small in frame, enormous in ability, is gliding across the ice in Italy with the whole world watching, chasing a gold medal that would cap one of the most genuinely remarkable stories in American sports. She is not a victim. She is not defined by any of this. She told you herself, she found meeting the FBI agent kind of cool. She is just someone who had every reason to walk away and kept showing up. That is the story. That is why it is trending. And honestly, that is why it deserves to be.